Before we get started, I kind of want to set the scene because this is a large Markan sandwich. He's going to begin with the crucifixion and obviously end with the women coming to the tomb. And we're going to talk about that because he's going to intersperse characters, because now Jesus is not really the main character per se. There's other people that Mark is going to enrich us with. One of them is Joseph of Arimathea. Whether you believe that part of the story or not, it doesn't matter. The belief is that he took the body of Christ to his family tomb. So we'll get to that in a minute, but we're going to do quite a bit of reading because I want you to sort of see this sandwich again and the beautiful way that women are wrapped into it. So I'm going to need some people to help reading this morning. We're going to start at chapter 15, verse 33, and we're going to read all the way to verse 41. So that's quite a bit of reading. So I thought what we would do is we would have someone read 33 to 39, and then we'll pause, just take a breath, and then we'll read again. So can I have a nice, slow, good reader? Would that be all right? Who'd like to read this morning?
Maureen? I could take it.
Okay. Who's I don't, can you raise
Kay?
So I can see? Oh, lovely. So Kay, you're going to start at 33 and you're going to go all the way to 39. Lovely. Okay. Thank you.
All right. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, listen, he's calling for Elijah. And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink, saying, wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to take him down. Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now, when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way, he breathed his last. He said, truly, this man was God's son.
Thank you. I just want you to notice one thing and keep this with you. Now, when the centurion who stood facing him, so we're facing each other, so we're close to each other. Okay, that's a really important thing. Keep that with you. Maureen, do you want to read, please, verses 40 through to 41? Thank you.
Unmute.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little different than yours.
That's okay. We like it.
So I'm starting at
40.
40.
Yes.
Hold on. I need larger print. I'm getting there. There were also women present looking on from afar. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James the younger, and Joseph and Salome. These women had followed Jesus when he was in the garden and attended to his needs. There were also among many others who had come with him to Jerusalem.
Thank you. Now I'm going to read my version, which is a little bit different. There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the younger, and of Joses and Salome. These used to follow him and provided for him when he was in the Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. Okay, talk to me. Talk to me about this presence of women. What do you think? So there's three. Okay, so first of all, first of all, there are different translations and we need to breathe into that. That's just the way, and the Gospels are all different, but we're going to concentrate on Mark this morning. If we diverge to the comparison, it'll take at least 5 hours, Joe, so I don't think you'll give that to us. So we're going to concentrate on Mark, and there's three women. An important point is they were not in front of Jesus. Come on, Mark, just give them a space right there at the foot of the cross. But what's important is the whole narrative has slowed down. Geographically, not necessarily emotionally, but it's slowed down. We're at a slower pace. Jesus is not performing miracles. Jesus is not teaching. Jesus is not moving from here to there. It's done. And the pace has slowed down, but we are introduced to not just the three, there were other women there. And one of the things that I noted when I read this and really thought about it is, I know you know the story of Martha and Mary. And when Jesus comes, Martha doesn't pay attention and Mary does, that whole sort of light and dark of their behavior. Here you have it also, because the women are at a distance. You're going to see them. They're going to come to each one of these transitions today: the crucifixion, the burial, and finding Jesus or finding the tomb empty where Jesus was. Women are serving. How they serve different from men, does that matter? The fact is they had a role. They had to have been with Jesus. He couldn't have traveled. We've traveled geographically, all of us, these past weeks. It's a huge distance. And he couldn't have done it alone. Women were there to help serve, clean, prepare food, maybe do other various sundry serving. But isn't that discipleship? So if Joe calls me into work tomorrow and says, Susan, I need you to wash the elements. I need you to take them home, polish the silver. Of course. She's asking me to be a servant. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. I'm sorry, my washing machine's broken. But do you see what I mean? It's not all the glory. And yet, remember, we are in the lens of a male writer. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you take that into account, so much of the New Testament is, we know and believe, are written by men. So it's their lens. But look at Mark. And this is why Mark and scholars, we love Mark. Because at the end, there are women. There are women, not just the three. Because then, as Maureen read, there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. So they didn't meet him in Jerusalem. Remember, I told you, you have to go up the hill to Mount Out of Olives and go down the Kidron Valley into the Old City, because the Old City is built from King David. So it's like this peninsula plateau surrounded by rivers. And they're dry now, but they're valleys. So they came up with him. They didn't meet him in Jerusalem. No. They came up with him. They were with him, and there were many. I think what's important too is that this, just these two words, right? I guess a little bit more, but in front of him and in a distance. So the centurion is there. Did he help with the crucifixion? We don't know, but he's there and the women are there. So let's unpack the women just for a minute, because you're going to see them. They're going to come again. So you have Mary, the mother of James the younger and of Joses. So she is the wife of Joses and the mother of James, just the younger, distinguishing that from one of the disciples. So if this is Mary, Jesus's mother, why didn't Mark say that? I don't know the answer, but why didn't he say that? And this has to take you back for a moment to pause about the author, Mark. We don't know for sure. We don't even know the date for sure. This Mark could have been a scribe for St. Peter. Mark could have been writing in the city of Alexandria, in the upper coast of Africa, and specifically Libya, in the town of Cyrene, where he is the patron saint, and they have a cave dedicated to their belief that Mark was there writing. How do we know Cyrene? That's the man that came upon Jesus on his way to be crucified, and when he dropped his cross, Simon of Cyrene picked it up and carried it. So it could be, maybe Mark was there writing. He could have been writing in Rome, possibly Syria. But what's important is if you've got these unknowns, but they definitely color what Mark is trying to show us now. And in this case, it's these women that have seen and witnessed. 3 are named. So how many women have we met with a name in the Gospel of Mark?
2.
One of them was not really particularly nice person. What's her name?
Plus many.
What's her name? She wanted John's head. Remember? Herodias. So in the Gospel of Mark, we started out this 6 weeks together. I thought they'd all be named. They're not. Herodias, who isn't exactly my favorite. And then way back in chapter 6, they mention the word Mary in relation to the family of origin of Jesus. That's it. And now, finally, at the end, we have some names, and that's important. Now, if it could be Magdalene, that's actually Magdala, which is a community that's above Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. And they have excavated that actually very, very recently. So it could be her. And then you can go down the road and say, oh, is this the prostitute? Is this the woman of sinful behavior? I actually don't look at it that way, but that's for a whole nother course that we'll have together about the Marys. But I just, I don't think that prostitution in that day was sinful, but I'm going to make sure I cover that with Joe first, and then we'll have a course about behaviors of women in that day. But just leave it to say that that is a possibility. We're not sure. But then it says Salome. So Salome is like today the name Sarah or Betsy or Susan. It's a common name. So we don't know. Okay, just like Mary was a common name. So just to be clear on that. Okay, so just to be clear, we have women observing the crucifixion. Okay, and now what's going to happen is we're going to have this peanut butter in the middle of our sandwich. And we're going to meet this other set of characters that have to do with the importance of what are they going to do with this body? It's coming up on the Sabbath. When the sun sets on Friday night until the sun sets on Saturday night, if you're following your Jewish faith, which they are, you cannot work. You cannot cook. You can't boil water. You can't clean your house. Everything is prepared ahead of time. And you certainly can't have a burial. Because remember, they've got to get that body ready. So there's a little bit of a rush right here. And what are you going to do with this body? Because he's not been crucified alone. If you were a very, very poor person, I think your body would have sat there and been eaten by the birds, and that would have been how it was. But the story that gets inserted now is now we meet Joseph of Arimathea. So let's read this. We're going to start at 42 and go all the way to the end of the chapter. It seems like it's long, but it's 42 to the end, and then we'll start chapter 16. But it's lovely. It's very good. Would anyone like to volunteer by raising their hand? Okay. Now let's see if I get the names right. Kitty, I know that's not your name. I'm supposed to call you Catherine.
Kathy.
Oh, I just need names up here, okay? Just the bottom line. Okay, so Kathy, if you could read that nice and slow.
From 42.
Yes, ma'am, all the way until the end, which is actually 47.
And when evening had come, since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself looking for the kingdom of God, took courage and went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate wondered if he was already dead. And summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he was already dead. And when he learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. And he bought a linen shroud, and taking it down, wrapped him in the linen shroud, and laid him in a tomb which had been hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph of Jose, came where he was laid, saw where he was laid.
Thank you very much. Mary Magdalene, okay, we saw her at the crucifixion, and Mary, the mother of Joses, she was at the crucifixion, along with others, but named specifically by Mark, saw where the body was laid. Okay, so tombs, Jerusalem is a white stone. It almost looks like the grout you have here in Alexandria between your brick. It's a white kind of stone. There's stones, it's called Jerusalem stone. It's everywhere. And there's not a lot of space, what can I say, soft ground to bury people. So your family, if you had means, they would open up a space in the rock and you would walk into it. They have excavated over 900 tombs within the Jerusalem area. So that's really, really important. So you can, when you go there, you can go see a tomb. You walk in, and then there are like long areas cut out of it like this. And that's where you would put the body. And then when the body, the skin, etc., was gone over time, then you take the bones and you put them in an ossuary. And they have obviously excavated many ossuaries that have the bones of the person who has died in them. So what's really important are a couple of details in here about Joseph. So Joseph of Arimathea, first of all, is located. So here's the Mediterranean Sea. Here's Jerusalem. Arimathea is a town kind of right in the middle. It's in the very fertile part of Israel. It's basically between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So we know Joseph is from there. I'm sorry, what's he doing in Jerusalem? Key point. So was he one of the new followers of Jesus? Had he been hearing what was happening, and he knew that because of Passover, that this itinerant Jesus was going to Jerusalem, but he's not from Jerusalem. That's important. So the question theologically is, how did he have a family tomb so near to Golgotha, which is the sort of mound of rock where Jesus was crucified along with others? How did he so near and quickly? Remember, the sun's going to set. He needs to get this body taken care of and put in the tomb. What was happening? How did his family have this tomb? We don't know. We don't know. But Josephus has written about Joseph of Arimathea. So, you know, whether or not you accept this as part of the story, and I do, what I do know, just because I had the privilege of living there for so long, is that there are many, many tombs that you can go and visit. And so I believe the diagram of the tomb. I believe that it had to be nearby because there was a time crunch. And also, what about Joseph? Finally, we have a figure, a follower of Jesus, not a disciple, that believes. He trusts. He realizes that this maybe is the Son of God. This is their Messiah that they've been waiting for. That he would have the courage to go to Pilate, who's not exactly the nicest person, right? He's the prefect. He's like the mayor. And to have, I mean, these are occupied people. This is not like, me riding my bike to Washington, D.C. and going to see my senator and say, hey, I want to tour the White House. No. These are occupied people. And he has the courage. And who's watching this? Who's watching this? Who do we know from this passage is watching where Jesus's body is taken?
Woman.
Yes. I'm sorry. Where are the disciples? I don't know. I don't know. But isn't it a new lens, I hope, that you look through this ending story of Jesus's life, that Mark chooses to speak of the women. Have the disciples fled? I'm not saying that's bad or good. I don't blame them for fleeing, because remember, if Pilate finds out that there are witnesses to this Jesus of Nazareth's life, they're in danger. Big time danger. Even the three that we met this morning with Joe in the homily that have come down from the mountain, they're in danger. So you could, I'm not saying that's an excuse, but I guess I am. Maybe they're not there. And again, that's why we have the beauty of this time together. We're looking at the gospel through the lens of a woman. And thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that women had to be there, and he names them. I want to mention one more thing, and this was in verse 46. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth and laid it in the tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. So I don't hear anything about anointing with expensive oil. I don't hear any of that, but I do hear about the white cloth. And the reason I just want to digress just for a teeny second is that that is still the practice of some sects of Christianity, that when they go to the Holy Land, they buy these white linen shrouds and they take them home to save for those in their family that will pass away. So we can summarize from that this was a practice. So Joseph does this. Now, I'm just going to say there had to have been a woman that helped him doing that. What can I say? Tender caring, but it's not there. So I'm just imagining perhaps, but he's affectionate. He's courageous, even if that was a practice. But what we know is that men would have wrapped men and women would have wrapped the bodies of women, but men could have wrapped the body of a woman. So it could be that there's a segregation here and we know what the practice was, but what we know is the body was heavy. There had to be others in the story, but it's a sandwich. It's a Markan way of just going, right? He's just kind of twisting what we think is going to be just a dance, right? Not a dance, a slow move to the end. But he brings in this new character that you have to admit he's the lead in this part of the story. Pilate, yes, but it's Joseph. And then the last verb that I love is he said, he, meaning Josephus, excuse me, he then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Hold on. If you roll something, what's the shape of something you roll? Come on, mathematicians.
Round.
Yes, yes, yes. So this is such a critical and beautiful part of why I love Mark. Just that one little word, we could digress and have research for a week, because it implies that it's a round stone that's going to cover the tomb. But remember a few minutes ago when I said they have excavated over 900 tombs around Jerusalem, some in the Kidron Valley, some right outside the city walls, and only 4 of them have a round stone to cover them. So we know it's round. I'm going to assume that, and others do, because he rolled it. You can't roll a square rock. Agree? That'd just be mighty hard. So I don't know if you all have been to Stonehenge, but it's kind of like that, big, huge stones. If they're square, they ain't rolling. But this one, Mark says he rolls it. And now I'm giving you some archaeological information to give you some basis for understanding a little bit more about Arimathea, Joseph of Arimathea. There's only 4 that they have found. So maybe he was wealthy. But what I know to be true is he trusted. He believed. He somehow had this understanding, as Jo talked so beautifully about in her homily this morning. Did he see the light? Did he see the shine, even though the body is gone? Maybe he was there at the crucifixion. I don't know. But it's just what Jo was implying, which was so great this morning, because we all have friends that we see the light from time to time. Did he see the light and say, I got to fix this? I need to have a place for Jesus to be buried properly. So again, the sandwich, I don't want to digress about this, but it's important that you see these little nuances that are not just specific to Mark, the Gospels in general, but just these little nuances that you may say, well, Sue, you can't fill in with all this information. I don't mean to do that, but there are some specifics that you can learn from. The one is rolling. And number 2, here's Golgotha, here's the gates of the old city. And there's several versions over the years, but my point is Golgotha is outside the city gates. So the tomb is outside the city gates. There's people. It's almost the Sabbath day. People are, and they do it today when you're in Jerusalem. When the sun is going to set, you got to be home, unless you're a Christian. If you're Jewish, you need to be. There's a hurrying, scurrying, and we think that Joseph must have had some connections, a family tomb, and that's where Jesus is. Okay, so now we have women witnessing the crucifixion from afar. We have women, very importantly, they have seen where the body has gone, because now the drama is going to continue. So now we have another sort of long passage. So I think maybe it'd be nice if we split it a bit. So Dorothy, would you like to read, perhaps? Could you read through verse 4? So we're at chapter 16. And if you could read 1 through verse 4, and then the next verse 5 until the end. Who else would like to read? Who has a good voice to read this morning, or who's awake enough? Okay, Jesus, you're coming back with us. Okay, thank you. So just, you want to read really slowly. Okay, so Dorothy, if you could begin, thank you very much.
When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?"
Not me.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they scattered, as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He's not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid.
Thank you. There's a lot there. Thank you to the readers. That was lovely. There's so much. There's so much here. How do we begin? And then find time to sort of conclude and summarize our time together. So let's begin again. Here are our women. They're back, all of them. Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome. And they bring spices, okay? That would be normal, normal for preparing the body. A bit unusual because remember I said the custom, especially as spelled out in Deuteronomy, is that men would prepare the body of a man or women, but women with women. But nonetheless, we know that it is not Saturday, okay, because you can't do any labor on Saturday. The sun is not set. And just like any big city in America or anywhere in the world, it's dangerous at night when it's dark for women, even today. So you don't go walking around 3 women in the night when the sun has set, because on Saturday night when the sun sets, at least today in Jerusalem, it's party time. So the Sabbath is over and you eat and you have a meal. It's celebratory. But I think it's important to note the reality of the context. They could have gone that night, but they didn't. It's dangerous. So they wait until the sun had risen. They went to the tomb. Remember, Sunday's the beginning of the day of the new week. What is that illusion of the sun had risen? The sun meaning the sun in the sky. What's
The resurrection.
Yes. Okay, so again, the gospel is written after Jesus. And we'll talk a little bit about the authorship to understand our new lens that we've learned to look through the gospel. So there's that illusion. Thank you, Mark. Every word counts in all the gospel. I'm sure Joe agrees, but specifically right here in this beautiful, sad, happy ending. The sun, the brightness. Okay, so there is that allusion to, remember Psalm 30. Weeping may linger in the night, but joy comes in the morning. So remember, all of these people would have grown up studying scripture, but specifically the Psalms. Probably Jesus sang them and memorized them his whole life. So such a reference here. They had been saying to one another, Who will roll away the stone for us, the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb? So it's tricky here. Remember, they've seen where Arimathea has taken the body. Mark uses the word roll. Does anybody else have, at this point, does anybody else have another verb, how they describe the stone, taking away the stone from the entrance? No. Okay. So again, they know where it is, and they know that the tomb has already been closed. And remember, they can't do this alone. It's impossible. Even if they had like a lever, a crowbar.
Couldn't be done.
Exactly. Any gender, as far as that's concerned. So they're concerned. They're like, oh my gosh, wait, what should we do? Which implies, I think, when you read Mark here, it must not have been a big crowd of people that went to the tomb the next morning. Maybe it is, as Mark has written, that people have testified and told him when he wrote the gospel. Maybe there were witnesses. Maybe there were a few more. But obviously, if you read it, they had been saying to one another, and it's in quotes, who will roll away the tomb for us from the stone from the entrance of the tomb? So I think we could put a little worry in that. When they looked up, they saw the stone, which was very large, had been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in white, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. I think they expected to see the body, right?
They didn't.
And what's the color?
White.
White. So the belief is that angels are male, and so there could be that metaphor, the belief, the description here that this is an angel sitting there. However you choose to interpret it, my point is there's this white again. Thank you, Joe, for your homily. Here's that white again, okay? And now we have, and sitting on the right side, and now we have a conversation. Do not be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He's not here. There is a place, he is not here. Look, there is a place there is the place they laid him. But go. Tell the disciples and Peter. We could have hours to discuss and Peter. Wow. Remember, no matter what I do in my life or have done, that's not good. That's evil. That's not right. That's not of good intention. And I'm far from perfect. Far from perfect. God will forgive me if I show an essence of repentance and growth and joy comes in the morning. Wow. Mark got it. Got it in that word. And Peter. At the end, Mark's saying, okay, look, to all of us, no matter, I'm not perfect at all. And I've had a lot of decades of life, but God is there in it with me, no matter where I've come from. So that in its own self is for another day to discuss the and Peter, but I just wanted you to note that. And then, so they went out, so they, meaning the women, went out and fled from the tomb. For terror, sorry, my little sticky note's in the way. So they went out and fled from the tomb for terror and amazement. Okay, can we step back a second? Why does it have the word amazement? I get the terror. Why is there that word amazement? Samson, talk to me about the word amazement. I know you probably speak about 3 or 4 languages, but why does Mark use that word amazement? What's so amazing about this?
Well, the body was gone. I mean,
Yeah, body's gone. Samson, what's amazing?
Amazing, I can see something new is happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. Be amazing if we could go swim in the Potomac this afternoon, that it was warm enough and go sailing. That'd be amazing. This is amazing. So why this contrast? And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Wow. So first they're seized with terror, amazement, and then they're afraid. Oh, and they don't tell anyone, and then they're afraid. Oh, and this is the end. We're not going to talk about why there's another ending to Mark, but that there was something added later, but there's reasons for that. So let's just end Mark here. Are you kidding me? Mark's leaving us hanging. And he's leaving us kind of like, wait a second. We've got these 3 women. They're scared, they're afraid, they're amazed. I would be too. And they don't tell anyone. Now remember, one thing you can surmise from this, they do have a reason to be afraid. Because if they are found to be followers of Jesus, they themselves could be punished, put to death. So I get the afraid part, but they don't tell anyone. Maybe until next week. but come on, Mark. But he just leaves us there. We're left here, Mark and scholars, just hanging on this beautiful, beautiful ending of these women. So before the time is up, and I don't want to get cut off, we've been on a journey. We've been on a really wonderful, at least for me, it's been a wonderful journey. And we journeyed through Mark. And yesterday, you could just imagine how boring I am, but yesterday I thought, well, I'm just going to time how long it takes me to read the whole Gospel of Mark. So I'm just being honest, and I'm a really slow reader, and I take notes, etc. My Bible's a mess, good mess. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, so when you have time, especially during Lent, it's wonderful because you know so much now. It would be really rich. So we've been on this journey together, and we haven't stopped on every single way to dig in, but we've stopped and seen through the eyes of the women that Mark has written in, and they don't have names, just Mary and Herodias, and these women at the end. So there's many theories, there's many understandings of who Mark was. There's not a firm decision. Recent scholarship does have him in Cyrene, in the upper part of Africa, writing there. Others say in Rome with Peter. So we're not sure. That's important because of his lens. And the other thing that's important to consider that I haven't mentioned is that Qumran is a community. It dispersed after Jesus's life, but it was for mystics and sort of Benedictines in that time, and they lived there. And they found what is known as the Dead Sea Scrolls there. So that was all their writings were put up in the mount. Obviously something was going to happen. And they took all their writings and put them in big, huge clay jars, because that's all been excavated, and hid them in the mountainside. And when archaeologists found them, or actually a shepherd found them and took them out, they found a reference to Mark. Along with other scripture, Old Testament, they found a reference to this person, Mark. So, and this was found in the year 60. So if Mark was written in 70, how could they have found? So we don't know the date for sure. Some people say after the fall of the temple, so 70. Some say before, but that's an important little note to make, especially about the Dead Sea Scrolls. But does it really matter? I'm a real concrete person. And I need to know what started World War I and what started World War II, and what did the Polish do when they were invaded, etc. But this is theology. It's not always concrete. But what we know to be true from this time together, especially delving into the lives of these women that we know were with Jesus, is that Jesus doesn't change. Jesus doesn't change according to Mark. When we first, bang, Mark just starts, right? There's no baby story, okay? There's no Nazareth infancy. He just starts at the baptism at the River Jordan with John and goes right through. What we know is the people, and specifically the women's stories that we have studied, we can use these as an example, is that Jesus wants a relationship with people who trust him. Remember the little girl, Jairus's daughter. Why would he believe that had trusted that Jesus could heal his daughter? But he did. And how did Jesus heal that little girl? He touched her. How did he heal Simon's mother-in-law? He touched her. And then not just about women, the story that comes after Joe's homily this morning, when Jesus goes down the mountain, there's a crowd of people and they're all talking and saying, who is this man? And he heals a man's son because the man believed, not because he wanted the proof of a miracle. No, it's because they trusted. What did the bleeding woman do? She wasn't, oh my gosh, she broke every rule. She went in a crowd of men. She was at her time, so she was shunned. She should have been, they stay away during that time, during their cycle. And she'd been bleeding for 12 years. And what happens? There's a touch. What does Jesus do with the children? He takes them in his arms. So there's a real affectionate part of Jesus that we've met in other ways, but specifically with his relationship with these women. He's anointed. She couldn't have just poured the oil on top of his head. Remember, it comes out kind of slow because it's based on oil, not alcohol. She might have done this. I don't know, but there's a touching. There's a touching that's important, and I know that in relationships that you have with people, not intimate relationship, but friendships, at least in American culture and certainly in Southern American culture. Get good friends, you see each other, you hug each other. So this is an affectionate Jesus that Mark has given us all these weeks. He wants a relationship. He hasn't changed even at the end because of Ann Peter, right? He forgives us. He loves us. He wants a relationship. And God in these stories is with us. Even now as we approach Lent, where's that light going to shine? I was thinking about Lent and thinking that normally we have kind of busy lives and we're out and about is what I'm saying. We see other people, but we don't. Not now because we're all sequestered in our homes. And so, how can I ask you to give up things for Lent or to be quiet and have time alone? We are alone, right? But let's flip it. And let's, in this season of Lent, keep digging like we've dug together to look at Mark, because we have Mark all year, to look at Mark in a different lens. It doesn't have to just be women, but to look at Mark, starting with women, is that the women who trusted him, even the demons, the demon in the synagogue at the very start, he knew exactly what he wanted. Why? Because he trusted this person, this itinerant Jesus, to take it out. Jesus is not trying to have a show and get attention. And there were a lot of exorcists in that day. But Jesus wants a relationship with people who trust him. And what I surmise after these weeks together is that there are women in this story who trusted what Jesus could do. And in this time of pandemic, when some of us are scurrying to get vaccines, or you won't get a vaccine and you're staying quarantined, now you have to wear 2 masks. Where is God in all this? Where was God in this crucifixion? Where was God in the presence of Pilate, asking to take that body? That was extremely brave. And where was God in a little girl that was 12 years old that was dead? And he lets her have more life. So I think that's what I've struggled with and felt much more comfortable with as our time comes to an end, that God was there and is there now and is here now. It doesn't matter what gender we are. It doesn't matter if yesterday I didn't do that and tomorrow I won't be doing something properly. It doesn't matter, because God's in the muck. He's in our worries. I'm very worried all the time about, what's going on with the pandemic. And where is God in that? And where was God with that body that was laid in the tomb? Where was God? God gave us the risen Christ. So it's good. It's all good.